Hello, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to the September 20th, 2020 Sunday School lesson When Loving is Complicated. Love versus Guilt. Uh, the scriptural text that we have on today will come from Genesis chapter 42, verses 6 through 25. Now, on last week, we discovered how Joseph's love for God and faithfulness helped him find success in Egypt. And like Joseph, we should aspire to remain steadfast in love and obedience to God when facing extreme hardships. And like Joseph again, we must learn to celebrate God's providential care in times of suffering. Now, on this week, we are faced with the dilemma of do we have the right to stay angry, especially once we realize that we have been wronged? What steps must we take to mend broken relationships? Looking to the context of the story moves forward that after serving his time in prison and several years working again in Pharaoh's court, when Pharaoh is suffering from strange dreams that no one in his court could interpret, Pharaoh's servant, the cupbearer, remembered how Joseph had interpreted his dream and shares this information with Pharaoh. That not only he interpreted the dream, but he did it so well that it actually came true. So Pharaoh sends for Pharaoh shares with Joseph his two dreams, and God gives Joseph the interpretation. 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Then God gives Joseph wisdom for the solution to the famine problem. Store a fifth of all the food during the years of abundance as a reserve to be used during the famine, and have someone wise to administer it. Pharaoh, seeing that God was with him, makes Joseph his second in command over all of Egypt. Joseph was 30 when he entered into Pharaoh's service. And so, immediately after that, for 7 years, Egypt was plentiful, and the abundance was so much that even more than a fifth was able to be they were able to. Once the famine hit, Egypt was not only able to feed their own people, but they were now in a position where they could sell and feed others in and around the surrounding region. And we are now, when we go to the text, 2 years into the famine. The text of Genesis 42, verses 6 through 8 says, Now Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold it to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them as like strangers and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? He said. They said, We come from the land of Canaan to buy food. Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. See, the 10 arrive in Egypt and unknowingly meet their brother Joseph, who they sold into slavery 21 years ago. He recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. Joseph is now the governor over the land. The Hebrew word translated as governor is shalik, which means ruler or person in a position of honor. Joseph was in charge of the whole land of Egypt, While Pharaoh is the ceremonial head, Joseph is in charge of the day-to-day administration of the land. As ruler over the land, Joseph sold to all the people of the land. The suggestion here would be that because of the importance of the economy of the land, Joseph takes under his portfolio the ministries of agriculture and commerce for proper accountability and supervision. The phrase does not infer that he directly participates in every individual grain transaction or that he deals directly with buyers. There are supervisors who would do that. Moreover, the food supply is stored in different cities around the country. Rather, it is Joseph who gives final approval of all sales. So merchants from all the Middle East and North African world came to Egypt to buy food, including his brothers from Canaan. Such foreigners must pass through Joseph, most likely for security reasons, lest there be spies among them. And as his brother enters Joseph's presence, they bowed to him with their faces to the ground. It is almost universally customary in most African and Arab or ancient Near Eastern countries for people to bow before their superiors, whether they be kings, officials, or elders. Joseph's brothers kneel before him just as the dream of his youth said that they would, over as we saw in Genesis 37:7. As his brothers enter, Joseph recognizes them but hides his identity from him. He made himself, as the word says, strange unto them by speaking roughly or harshly to them, camouflaging his identity to make it even more difficult for them to recognize him. Treating them as strangers, Joseph asks them where they're from. Their answer, from the land of Canaan to buy food. The repetition in verse 8 that Joseph knew his brethren but they did not know him serves as an emphasis of the fact that they could not have imagined first seeing Joseph alive, much less as the man on whom their life literally depends. Joseph was only 17 years old when he was sold into slavery. Now, 21 years later, he has grown into a strong man. His appearance has changed, and he is now clean shaven like an Egyptian. He dresses like an Egyptian, and his language is Egyptian as he speaks to the brothers through a translator. Genesis 42:9 through 12 says, Joseph also remembered the dreams that they had dreamed about them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They, the brothers, said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." See, on seeing his brothers prostrating before him, Joseph remembers the two dreams he had about them many years before. The dreams that almost cost him his life, that caused him to be sold into slavery to Egypt through God's providential grace. He realized that the faithful God is about to fulfill the promises God made to him through those dreams. He continues to act and intensifies his interrogation of his brothers. He accuses them of being spies. You came to see the nakedness. In other words, you came to see the vulnerabilities of Egypt. They vehemently denied the accusation and reaffirmed their honesty and their mission, just to buy food. To further stress their sincerity, his brothers give Joseph details of their family makeup and their background. They tell them that they are all siblings from the same father. Since the brothers refute the claim of espionage by saying that they are brothers, one can assume they guess Joseph's bias in making his accusation was the improbability of such a number of foreigners traveling together. They are not openly representing a nation, nor are they a whole caravan of traders. They are only 10 men. And so when Moses selects spies to enter into the promised land, he selects roughly the same number of men as you would see in Numbers 13, 2 and 3. The reason for this detail is that it would be irrational for all 10 of them to come from the same parent to engage in spying. Spies will more likely be chosen to represent a wider selection of the population. The brothers respond saying the reason that they're a group is not that they're working together on a nefarious plot, but simply that they are brothers. Genesis 42:13 and 17 says, They said, We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more. But Joseph said to them, It is just as I have said to you. You are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else, as Pharaoh lives, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. You see, in spite of their denial, Joseph repeats his accusation, and he does it emphatically. Again, unable to convince Joseph of their sincerity, they reveal more about their family makeup. They tell him that they are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. They tell him about their other 2 siblings as well. They tell Joseph that the youngest is left at home with their father and that the other one is not. Of course, they are referring first to Benjamin, Joseph's brother, and to Joseph himself, whom they presume is now dead. Notice, they refer themselves twice as thy servants, unwittingly fulfilling Joseph's first dream. After the brothers' disclosure of their family history, Joseph pretends to even be harder on them. In fact, he is grateful to know that the only brother born of his mother Rachel is still alive. As a test, Joseph tells them that they must bring their youngest brother to him. Joseph emphasizes his command by swearing by Pharaoh, by the life of Pharaoh. You see, to swear on the life of a reigning monarch, a deity, or God places great importance to the order or statement. The pharaohs of Egypt were regarded as gods, so Joseph continues to play the part of a native Egyptian and swears by one of their gods. His brothers understand the significance of that statement. And to prove their honesty, Joseph suggests that one of them should go home to bring his brother to Egypt, while the rest shall be confined in prison. This will prove whether there is any truth in you, as Joseph says to them. He wants to know if they are really truthful in their dealings or treacherously still the same as they were 21 years ago when they sold him into slavery. The word truth, the Hebrew emeth, can also mean trustworthiness. Joseph wants to make sure that they can be trusted, that they are trustworthy, and that there is a genuine change in them. So he orders that all 10 be kept in prison for 3 days. Genesis 42:18 and 22 says, on the third day, Joseph said to them, do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us. Then Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. Joseph has suggested that one of them should be sent home to bring their brother, but he changes his plan. On the third day of their incarceration, Joseph tells them that only one will stay behind bars, while the other 9 will return home with their purchase. The first reason for changing his plan is spoken directly. It is because of his fear of God. He says, for I fear God. That is, I revere God. For the first time before his brothers, Joseph mentions God, the Hebrew word being Elohim. Elohim is the plural form of the Hebrew word El, which means God, and it is widely used of the supreme God. Joseph still worships the true God of Israel. However, the brothers do not know whether to take the comment as a profession of their faith or of faith in general. The translation leans towards God, but it could also mean gods. The brothers are also hearing Joseph's words through a translator. Thus, the second reason for releasing the 9 brothers instead of 1 is implicit. 9 people would carry more food home than just 1 person. And Joseph is motivated by his reverence for God and prompted by love and genuine concern for his starving family in Canaan. It appears that the ultimate reason for his changing of plan is his love for his younger brother and the desire to see him. Thus, the condition is that they must bring him as proof of their truthfulness. This is also a definitive test of their honesty, and holding one back would motivate them to come back with Benjamin. Now, this whole experience seems to bring conviction in the brothers' hearts. They realize that they are now reaping what they had sown, unaware in their conversations with each other that Joseph understands them, and feeling remorseful, they reminisce how cruel and harshly they treated Joseph a long time ago. They confer among themselves how Joseph's anguish, his pleas and tears never moved them. Rather, they hardened their hearts and sold him to Egypt. They lament their past actions and their current punishment. And Reuben's contribution to the discussion is roughly, I told you so. Does not seem to help the situation. Nevertheless, he unconsciously reveals to Joseph his kindness towards him and the effort he made to rescue him during his time of agony. They, however, never show genuine repentance for their past wicked conduct. Rather, they feel guilty and sorry for themselves, not really remorseful for what. In Genesis 42:23 and 25, they did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept, and then he returned and spoke to them. And he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. This was done for them. See, as they deliberate, they don't know that Joseph understands all that they were saying, for he is speaking through an interpreter. Up until that point, Joseph has been able to control his emotions. Now, on hearing their discussion and the guilt that they feel, Joseph can control his feelings no longer. Not yet ready to express his emotions openly, though, Joseph withdraws from the room to weep privately. See, apart from not wanting to reveal his identity, the cultural expectation then, which is a harmful cultural expectation, which is the same cultural expectation that we see now, is that men aren't supposed to cry. This would be especially true for a person in such a high position of authority. It would be degrading to the office, a show of weakness. Christians know, however, that emotions have no rank when it comes to family and loved ones, particularly in the expression of joy, excitement, and happiness or grief. All people, male and female, powerful and lowly, should be encouraged to exhibit their full range of emotions. After weeping privately, Joseph returns to the room and resumes his communications through an interpreter with them. Out of the 10, Joseph chooses Simeon, binds him in their presence, and confines him in prison. Why would he choose Simeon, the second oldest of the 12, instead of Reuben, the firstborn? Well, some scholars suggest that it's because he realized that Reuben showed him kindness and saved his life many years back when the rest of them had planned to kill him. Now, with Simeon in prison, the 9 are allowed to go back to their families in Canaan with their purchase. But before their departure, Joseph gave orders not only to fill their sacks with grain, but to put each person's money back in with the sack. Now, the estimated distance between Canaan and Egypt is about 200 miles. It would take about 10 days to make the trip riding donkeys. Probably it would take them more days with the donkeys carrying the heavy sacks of grain and the men trekking on foot. Joseph orders to give them provision for the way. That is, they don't have to use up the food that they put on the donkeys. They give them an extra food supply to last the 9 brothers and their donkeys for the duration of the journey home. You see, Joseph was generous and kind to his brothers in spite of the harshness of his speech and treatment towards them. Why? because he was motivated by love and the knowledge that God was in the plan. Joseph forgave them and cared for them, even though they had not realized it. His purpose was to bring them to repentance and reconciliation. That is what genuine love can do, and we can live such lives like Joseph. Remember, my brothers and sisters, the body of Christ must model before the world the ministry of reconciliation, as we too have been blessed to be reconciled to a holy God. Remember, while it is a very human response to be mad at someone, especially when they have hurt us, it is only by our fear and our respect for God and recalling God's grace towards us that we can move away from hurtful emotions and respond differently. Look in the mirror and tell the truth to yourself. Have you ever accidentally or purposely treated someone harshly? Have you ever inflicted pain on someone else? Come on, my brothers and sisters. I believe that we all, at one point or another, have been the culprit like Joseph's brothers. However, we must honestly examine ourselves and our relationships to show the kind of love that God through Christ demonstrated for us. Look in the mirror and tell the truth. We must model before the world the ministry of reconciliation, as we too have been blessed to be reconciled to a holy God. When there is conflict, we should acknowledge the validity of those emotions, but also never shrink from the hard task of showing humility and forgiveness. We must always engage in a process of mediation that brings forth healing and restoration and not isolation. While it may not always be easy, just as God quickly forgives us, we too must be quick to forgive. Thus, let me ask you this question. What would you do if you had the position, the power, and the opportunity to pay back someone who had hurt you? Would you seek revenge or reconciliation? My brothers and sisters, that includes our lesson for this week. But on next week, we'll be looking at Genesis 45, verses 1 through 15, as we look to keeping hope alive. Throughout the week, I want you to think about that sometimes one is overwhelmed by tragic events in his or her life. What can keep hope alive once the struggle ends? So as you prepare for next week, keep on with the daily readings. Monday, Psalm 43. Tuesday, Genesis 43, 1 through 15. Wednesday, Genesis 44, 1 through 13. Thursday, Genesis 44, 14 to 17. Friday, Genesis 44, 18 to 26. Saturday, Genesis 44, 27 to 34. So that on Sunday we can talk about Genesis 45, 1 through 15. Feel so inclined to give to the Sunday school, you can through Cash App. Remember, put in your amount, hit pay, go to MyCMBCNC for the Sunday school. Remember, we always look forward to each and every one of you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. over at Cornerstone, where right now we're out in the field where we worship together. Or you can see us through live streaming via Facebook or YouTube. Just go to mycmbcnc.org and it will direct you to either one. May God bless you and God keep you as we look forward to the